So welcome to the Escape Your Limits podcast. I'm Matthew Januszek, the host of the Escape Your Limits podcast, and I'm going to do a review of 2018. The podcast started with a couple of influences. I had a very good friend, the disruptive entrepreneur, Rob Moore, and he probably was the first one that introduced me to podcast, and he'd set up his own podcast, which he'd been doing for a few years, and he kindly asked me if I wanted to jump on it with him. And we did an interview, and he just mentioned to me, said, you should really think about doing this, could be interesting in the space you're in. And then at a similar time, I was sort of following Gary Vee. I'd been into Gary Vee a long time ago. I saw him at Business Mastery in Vegas many years ago when he was just getting started with the Wine Library project, and I followed him for a few years, and then I think he went away, and I didn't really get into him. And then for some reason, a few people were talking about him. He had his book, and I started to listen to his podcast, but it took me a while. I didn't really get his style. I couldn't get into him. And then I think one day I was in a gym, listened to the whole podcast, and his message started to come through to me. So combining what I was getting from him with what I'd heard from Rob made me think about our business and our marketing and what we were doing. And I became aware that we were probably a little bit out of touch with the market, with what a lot of our younger audience were getting involved in. And it just kind of made me rethink our strategy as a business, and got me to think about, maybe just doing things different. Because I guess in business it's very easy to continue to do the same things over and over again just because everybody else is doing. And as a sort of small to medium-sized company within our industry, you kind of look at the big companies and you say, well, look, what are they doing? And they're almost like an example of what the right thing to do is. So you look around yourself in any situation and you say, okay, what's everybody else is doing? Let's follow that. But I guess if you look in the world today, then that's probably not a great strategy. There's lots of reasons why the bigger companies are doing what they're doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the right thing. So it kind of gave me a reason to sort of look inward and really challenge what's happening out there, look at some of the new businesses that are emerging, look at how people have been growing on the back of the internet, and then say, okay, what's right for us. So it took me a year really from making the decision that we were going to do it, which happened one New Year's Day. Actually, I was in Portugal running. All the endorphins were running through me. I was getting very sort of full of ideas as I do, and I made a decision. I said, right, by the end of a year, I'm going to have written a book and I'm going to start a podcast. I didn't end up doing the book for different reasons, but I did commit to doing a podcast, and that was really how the whole thing came about. Once I made the decision to do it, then it became, okay, I'm going to do it now. How do I do it? And the original idea was podcasts are audio, and so I was thinking about what equipment do I need, what's involved. I didn't really think about I didn't think too much beyond, in terms of how you were interviewing and what you would interview. But I started to think about, well, what would be some of the things I need to do to make it happen. So I started with okay, what's the basic setup? And I had a couple of people that helped me out. We got some sound equipment, microphones, and that kind of thing. And I brought the kit. And I think I made the decision to say, well, look, at least if I buy the kit, then I'm forced to do it. So I went out and got John, who's one of the guys in our marketing team, to go out and buy the equipment, and it was sat there. So I thought, okay, I'm on the way. I've got the equipment, I've got the sound stuff. It seemed fairly easy to do it, and that was the first part. And then the second bit was for whatever reason, I thought we need to do some sort of video. And so I spoke to Nick and asked him about how cameras and tripods and setting it up, and we met one evening, and he brought his camera, he says, right, here you go, you can borrow this, you can test this out. And it was on a tripod, and he started talking me through the settings and how to do it. And I said, look, Nick, this just isn't going to work. There's no way I'm gonna make this happen. It's just not the way my brain works. So I decided to just keep it simple and start with an audio-only podcast, and maybe use my iPhone, because I could kind of get that. It's very simple. Press play and record it from there. So that's how I started. Once I'd sort of worked out how I was going to capture the information, then I went on to say, okay, well, what do you need to do in a podcast? So questions you ask, length of the podcast, how you get your guests, what kind of podcast does it need to be? Is it question and answers? Is it telling a story? There was the more I got into it, there was so many different routes that I could go down. So there's a lot of really good podcasts that talk about people who want to do podcasts. So I listened to a bunch of them. There's quite a few books on podcasts, and I listened to all of those. There's lots of books and information on people interviewing. So I just went through all of them, listened to people that were doing it. There was some really good stuff that Tim Ferriss had done about how to get started and what he did to get started. So I just pulled all that information out and then focused on a few key areas, and that kind of helped me with the template for what I was going to do going forward. The first interview I ever did, we kind of had a trial run, and I feel really bad. But we did a couple, but I sort of did a first one with Foxy, who's a really good friend. He's been with the business for many years, and we never put it out. So we will have to actually put this out. But it was the first one, and Foxy's been a professional rugby player in England, and he's had a pretty interesting career. So I asked Foxy if he would kind of be our guinea pig, and I interviewed him. And for me, it was an easier way to start, because I knew Foxy, or I knew a bit about him, and we did it in our own training studio and a lot of familiar surroundings, and it went pretty well. It was interesting at the time to learn about how the time flies, and if you're not easy, you don't really get any message out of the conversation. But it was a good example. I did the one podcast, and everybody sort of said, yeah, that sounded good. And then I thought, right, I'm off. I'm going to go into the big world and start speaking to people and doing a podcast. And I guess looking back, I probably should have done a few more with friends and family and people, because there is a lot involved in interviewing, and a lot more than I guess I appreciated at the time. But I guess, I'm someone who just wants to get on with it, get into it, and I just needed to get started, I suppose. So the first real person I interviewed was James Balfour from One Rebel, and he was absolutely fantastic. I didn't know James really, really well, but it was a great interview, and it went a lot better than expected. And despite me being extremely nervous about what to ask and what happens if I forget my questions or run out of questions and it doesn't go well, all these things are kind of going through your mind. It went pretty well, and it is again one of the most popular podcasts, and people are still downloading it today. The thing that's going into it that I was most nervous about was just cocking the whole thing up. As I said, I didn't know James really, really well, and we had a big camera crew. So we had John and Dom and all these cameras and all these lights. So it looked extremely slick and professional. It had been hyped up as being big and professional, and then it was really, camera was on me, and now I needed to kind of make this work. So I was worried about the flow of the conversation, and as I said, would I remember what to say? Would I know how to create a start, a middle, and an end? And would would James, who'd kindly given his time up to do it, would he be pleased with how it went and the questions and the story and how it turned out? And I guess at the end of it went much better than what I expected, to be honest, and it was quite a relief to have done it, and everybody felt, that was it was a great episode. I'm not sure whether it was good or a bad thing, but we did one in the morning with James in one part of London, and then we moved over and we did David from Gymbox, who was the second, and slightly different situation. But I suppose the more you do them, the more you think about what you're saying and the message that you're getting over and the direction that you're going. I started to get on the thought process about how can I make it better? How can I be asking better questions, providing more value and more interesting, rather than just having a general chat for an hour without any particular purpose. And as you go into them, you sort of have to think about what is it that what is it that you want the listener to get. Is it going to be worth them spending an hour or longer listening to what you're saying? And as I said, the first ones were just really about getting through them without messing up and without forgetting your questions, and making sure it all sort of comes together. And then I guess as you go through them, you're a lot more conscious of the value that you're providing. The biggest fail I've had in anything like this, when you go in something new, you're stretching yourselves, you're putting yourself outside your comfort zone. So everything kind of helps you get better, and with you, Kevin, we've had, I guess, more lessons than fails. I don't like to call any of what we've done fails, because it's been a great experience. I don't think we've failed on anything, but there's certainly been a lot of times where we review things and say, how can we do things better? How can we do things different? And everyone's a little bit different. A lot of them have been very exciting, and at the time they've always been great. I guess afterwards we probably look at them in a different way and say, well, we could do this better. Just the same as you with your lighting and the sound and the cameras. Is every single one of those, okay, can we make this better? Can we improve the sound? Can we improve the lighting? Can we improve the camera angles? And I guess it's been a similar way of that. Can we ask better questions? Can the question and answer process be simple? There's a funny thing that I talk about with people quite a lot. And when you have a conversation, it's quite different than having a podcast. When you have a conversation with someone, you naturally agree with what they're saying. It's almost like polite. If someone's talking to you, you say, yeah, and you're kind of agreeing and empathizing and understanding. Yeah, right, okay. And in conversation, you don't think about it. It sounds naturally. When you do it on camera, and you're saying, yeah, right, okay, it sounds terrible, and you're conscious that through the whole way it's like, just shut the fuck up. Let the other person sound. We don't want to hear you. So you have to slightly behave in a different way, and it's not until you've done it and then you listen to yourself back that you then realize that you have to do things a little bit differently. And I wouldn't say that's a fail, but I guess some people we've had, and it's keeping them on track with a story that people can follow, because it's very easy to ask them about the history and where they started, and you can kind of go off on a real tangent. And if you've only got 30 minutes or 40 minutes, then it's really about, okay, you want to understand the background of the person, but then you want to kind of have some story and some lessons that is going to be valuable for the people that you're listening to. And I guess that's the art, is getting enough information whilst being able to tell a story. And a lot of times when you ask questions and people talk, they don't always realize straight away the information and the knowledge and the lessons that they've really got deep inside. Sometimes it takes you a while, almost like to warm up. It's like a workout, until you start breaking into a sweat, you're not really in your stride. When you get comfortable, then the real lessons come out of people's unconscious minds, and that's when the magic happens. But in a lot of cases, it's not natural, and people are not comfortable to sit in front of a camera unless they're people that have done it a lot. Tony Horton was a great example. When the camera comes on, he's instantly a totally different person and he comes alive. In a lot of cases, people are very successful business people that we talk to, but they're not in camera very often. So for them, they're very conscious that there's a camera on there, and in some cases when it goes off is when you have the real interesting conversation. I've not had anything that I would say is a fail, but there's been lots of things you and I have looked back and we've said, okay, we can now do that better, and we can now do that better. And I guess, I'm sure in the next 12 months, doing this at this time next year, we'll look back on the recent ones that we think are fantastic, and we'll also be saying how we can do things better, because I guess that's just what we're all about. There's always little gems in all of them that kind of make you realize that we need to keep doing this. We get a lot of emails and social media comments from people. In fact, I read one just last night. A lady was talking about her son, and it was just a great story about how one of the particular episodes that we shared had really impacted her and inspired her, and was something that she wanted her son to listen to. And so I think a lot of the guests that we have talk to people in different ways that we could never imagine. And everybody's got their own story, and everybody hears things in a very different way. And so I suppose one of the things that really, especially, is just hearing the stories from other people about what it does. I guess personally, it's always nice, and we did a podcast probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago with Ethan Kramer, and I went in the gym at night, and this guy was like, "Oh wow, you're Matthew Januszek," and I thought that you'd set this whole thing up with Ethan, and it was a bit of a joke, but apparently, speaking afterwards, this guy had listened to all the podcasts and he thought they were brilliant, and he was just genuinely a fan of what we've done. So I suppose moments like that are pretty cool as well. But the real things are people where it's deeply touched them, and they've made a difference. And the other one that's just popped into my mind is when I was back in England a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 guys that had listened to the podcast, and they'd inspired them to give up their jobs and to go after their dream and open their own business. And I suppose if that's something, through the stories that we're telling about other people and what they've achieved, inspire other people to go on to do great things that they may have been sitting on the fence, then that's an awesome thing that we're doing. One of the things I started to notice, probably about 6 months in, is that you start joining the dots. There's patterns, and these are not people that have got anything necessarily, a lot of them, to do with each other, but independently, whether you speak to someone in Asia or in the UK or in America, there's certain common themes that tend to come up in conversation, and those are the things that I wanted to really identify and note, and maybe at some point do a dedicated episode on them. And at the moment I've got 13, and I'm sure there's many more. But if I have to pick some of the key ones, then I think one of them, which is pretty universal, and I can certainly relate to it, is and there's a statement. I believe the saying is the 5 people that you spend the most time with is who you become. I think there's different ways of saying it. People have explained that in very, very different ways. And what it means to me really is that there's a difference between people that your friends and your family, and the people that you just you can't divorce your friends and family. But in some cases, you need to mentally divorce them, because it's very easy for, particularly if you want to move out of the sort of things that are going on in that circle. If you want to go out and do something different, if you want to break away, if you've got different ideas, then in a lot of cases, people around you that have been close to you can feel threatened by that. And particularly if it's a close friend and you want to go and make something different to probably what everybody else is doing, it's really difficult, because you're almost like giving up and moving away from people that you spent a lot of your time with. So not only are you lonely in that journey, but you've not got the support of the people around you. And in some cases, you may have people that are probably almost saying what you're doing is wrong, and you feel very, very uncomfortable about it. So one of the things that's come up is that you've got to get the right people around you, whether that's in a sort of in a virtual place, so you're kind of filling your mind with sort of virtual mentors in the way of books and podcasts and things you watch on television or whatever, but you've got to kind of get these virtual mentors, or you've got to get real people around you that are sort of on the same wavelength in where you're going. Because if you don't, then what's going to happen is just unconsciously the negativity or the questioning or the doubt is just going to seep into your unconscious mind, and that's going to come out at the times you don't need it. So really to move forward, everybody said this, and as they've said it, I've started to kind of relate it to what I do and how I've made changes throughout my life and career, and getting positive people around you, as sort of boring and as overused as what it is a really, really important way to kind of be successful, whatever success means to you. So that's extremely important, and it's kind of related to the first one. Is about not letting other people judge you. I can't remember who said this in the podcast, but we were talking about going on camera and actually putting yourself out there on social media. And this I believe, and I don't want to quote exactly, but this is a guy who's built from memory successful social media following. And most of the people that have done that, when I ask them, are they natural? Most people have all said that no, they weren't natural in front of a camera. They didn't feel comfortable in presenting in front of people. They didn't feel comfortable in putting themselves out there. But one of the particular statements I remember is that they got over that by realizing that the people that were judging them or saying that they looked stupid or idiotic or they were doing crazy things on, why are you doing that on camera? Who do you think you are? The tipping point was that someone said that I suddenly made the decision and realized that these people that were saying that weren't helping pay for my house, paying for my paying for my car, paying for my family, supporting the success of the business. None of these were helping or contributing in any way whatsoever. And if I wanted myself, my family, my business to progress in any way, it was down to me. And I need to do whatever I need to do to make that work. And if that means putting myself out there on camera, telling my story, sharing my message and promoting my business, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's very bold and that's correct, but it's very difficult to do. And again, you've got to not be afraid of failing, number one, because you're not going to be good at when you do it. And you've also not got to be afraid of looking stupid, because when you first do it, you're not going to be good. As everybody said, and a few people, Mike Arcee, who's got a big internet marketing company, he showed me a video of some of his first interviews and podcasts, and he's right, he was terrible, and most people are, myself included, absolutely terrible. But that's where everybody starts, whether it's a sport, whether it's riding a bike, whether it's walking. Nobody starts absolutely great. They get great over time from doing it over and over again. So I think you've just got to think, number one is, look, these people who are probably making it difficult for you to get on there in the first place, unless they're paying your bills, then probably ignore what they're saying. And then number two, don't be afraid to look stupid, to be crap, but be prepared to do whatever it takes to get better. And eventually, even if you're just not talented, you're not good, you're just going to get better because you're doing it over and over again, and you're going to be better than someone who's probably not giving it a go. So that's probably the second interesting lesson. And this one's about goal setting. And yeah, goal setting, boring, heard it many times before. But what I didn't realize, and I was listening to a guy called Joe Dispenza, and what he said kind of made a lot of things fall into place with what people were telling me. It's about goal setting, and what I realized goal setting means to your brain. It's about where you spend where you focus on, where you spend your time mentally. And I said to a few friends when I started to understand this, I said, okay, think about a traditional day. And I was speaking to a few friends that had a couple of challenges with their businesses at the particular time. I said, okay, think about your day. When you get up in the morning, throughout the day, before you go to bed in the evening, if you had to divide your day up and sort of write down almost like minute by minute or chunk of day by chunk of day, what are the thoughts that are going through your mind? How much of the day are you spending thinking about the things that you don't want to happen? And things that are not enjoyable, that are quite difficult and challenges that you're dealing with. And how much of the time are you spending thinking about where you want to go, the stuff that you're excited about, the stuff that's going to be, why you're doing all this and the direction that you're going. And you could call it goals or you could call it focus. And where they sort of say where focus goes, energy flows. And it's very true. And I think if you look at what happens in your mind, your unconscious mind automatically is trained to do certain things. And you're probably not consciously aware of what those things are that it's doing. But my friends were saying, well, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about a few of these problems. It's on my mind. I'm not waking up in the morning thinking, great, I've got these problems, but that's my goal, that's where I'm going. When you're in that state, you're waking up in the morning thinking about your problems. And throughout the day, when your mind's not so busy it can't think of anything, you're thinking about those problems. And at the weekends, when your mind's not preoccupied and full, you're thinking about those problems. And before you go to bed, you're thinking about those problems. So if you had to put it as a percentage of your day when you're focused on things that you don't want to happen or that are kind of in your past, as opposed to where you want to go, it's a big percentage. It's 50, 60, 70, almost 80%. And what you should be doing, and it's not being in denial, but it should be, okay, look, I'm aware of that, I'm conscious of that, where do I want to go? And that, for a start, it makes you feel a whole lot better, because when you have those thoughts, you have an emotional feeling. So I says, when you think about that, what does that make you feel inside? And generally it's an emotion that you get in your body, which is not a great emotion. It's a kind of a negative emotion. It's something in your stomach. It makes you don't feel good. When you're in the mindset of thinking about something exciting and something good that's going to happen, it's an uplifting emotion. So regardless of where you're going, what you want to be doing is you want to have good emotions, because you're going to be able to deal with those problems a lot better than you are if you have bad emotions. Also, you're in a positive state, you're thinking about where you want to go, and you're changing that balance in your day. Instead of at 60, 70, 80% thinking about things that have happened in the past and things that you don't want to happen, you're spending your day thinking about where you want to go, feeling good about it, and solving problems, which is going to help you get where you want to go. So I think the goal setting part, as overused as what it is if you can apply that to things that you think about on an ongoing basis, and how much time you're spending in the positive frame of mindset, as opposed to worrying about things and reliving things that are in the past, then I think that's probably a great takeaway. And most of the people that I've spoke to are they spend a lot of time in the morning. Surprisingly how many people meditate. And when they're meditating, they're focusing on they're focusing on what they want to have happen, and they're sort of challenging those thoughts about things they don't want to happen or the problems, and they're probably reframing them. And I think that's probably the most powerful thing. I don't know whether it's just me or whether I have this sort of up and down mentally and a worried about things in some cases, and it can be consuming. But certainly I think if you can control your mind and your thoughts and where you want to go, you're going to be in a lot better position to deal with people that work for you, because instead of you being in your mind and worried and then you having someone who comes to talk to you and you not being happy, you can speak to that person and you're happy, and you can take on a challenge instead of you being in a negative and sort of not positive state, and you can deal with it in a positive state. And I think that's a great lesson, and that's probably one of the most important ones I'm sort of working on and looking to improve at the moment. Long answer, but that's something I feel very passionate about at the moment. very excited about what's going on in the business. We've got some, it was our 20th year this year. We've got some fantastic products that we're working on that we're going to be launching in the year ahead over the next 12 months. And they're, as a business, we're evolving and we're moving into new spaces. And I think these things are really, I get excited about the products that we make. I'm very passionate about them because I feel as though there's a part of me in them. And I love the design and I love innovation, and some of the things we've got coming out are really have a lot of those in there. So I'm excited about just watching that journey and being involved in them. I'm excited about taking those products and creating all the sort of magical marketing materials and videos and creativity around them, because again, that's something I love to do, and we've got a great team around us, and we're in a very different space. And I think we're really excited about putting some great material out, not necessarily just for financial reasons, but just it's great to make beautiful There's nothing better than doing that. So I think that's an artistic thing I'm passionate about. Excited. We've just finished a planning session for 2019 with some of the guests that we've got, or the guests that we're aiming to get. At the moment, we don't know if any of them are going to agree to come on the podcast, but we've got some huge, ambitious goals. And knowing the way things go and the team, I'm just the front. I'm the one that sort of sits in front of a camera. The magic happens behind the camera. And I'm really excited that some of the ideas that the team have got and what we're looking to do next year, both for us, for the journey that we'll be part of, but also for the people that will be watching it and listening to it. Because as we talked about, we're very keen on taking these podcasts in a different direction. As a company, we're not followers. We don't look at something and say, let's copy that and let's do it. And it's very easy in the podcast space to say, well, look at some of the people that are really popular at the moment and let's copy them, let's follow their format. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, or we shouldn't take lessons from what these successful people have done. There's certainly a lot of learnings, but we believe we want to take our own way in terms of the content, the messages that we're given. And I'm very excited about now we're in a position where they can create their own personality. We can create, and we've got a unique audience. We've got people that are sort of, we've known for many, many years. And I think we're just very focused on who those people are and delivering some real value to our small community that we're developing. So I'd say those are some of the things that we're excited about. And that's the kind of stuff that gets me up very early in the morning to go ahead and do this crazy stuff. In a lot of cases, I don't know whether there's one person or 10,000 people or whatever listening to this. But I do get some wonderful messages, as I've said earlier, from people that have taken the time to listen to what we've been working on producing. And I really sincerely thank people for, I guess, trusting and believing in us. The guests that have taken a gamble and given up their time to be on the podcast, when in a lot of cases they've never heard of us before, didn't know what they're letting themselves in for. We could be any kind of Mickey Mouse outfit, but I really appreciate people that have been on and believed in us, and also the people that have taken the time to listen to it and also then tell us about what they think and support us to continue to do this, because without that, then there's really no point in us doing this. So as long as we're reaching people and people are getting value out of them, then we'll continue to commit a lot of time and a lot of resource in doing it. And it's really important because as a business, I've got several companies. I've got an absolute full-time position within Escape Fitness, which is more than enough to keep me occupied and a wonderful family at home. So this isn't my real job. This is a passion project that the company believes is a good thing to do for the industry. It's something that when I first started out many years ago, would have really seen value in is to have the ability to have examples of people that have succeeded and almost like inspired me to say, well, if you do this and you do that, then you can succeed. So it was really something that I wanted to do to inspire the younger version of me, and that's really the reason that we want to do these and continue to do them. We don't do advertising. We don't make money from this podcast. There's a lot of personal, I guess, value I get out of the interviews, but we're really doing this to share some of the unique opportunities and experience that I end up in, and as I said, it's there to, in all of those stories, hopefully there's different lessons and messages that we can use to inspire other people, just to really expand two things. What can happen, the amazing benefits of being involved in this great health and fitness world and space. And secondly, which is the real message of the podcast, which is escape your limits. What is possible if you just push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone, which isn't easy, it's very uncomfortable, but if you just push yourself a little bit, that whole circle opens up. And if you have that mentality of escaping your own personal limits and the limits that probably other people and society sets on you, that there's some fantastic things and there's a fantastic life there. It's not going to be easy to get there, but there's certainly the rewards if you're able to do that. And hopefully all of these people are great examples to show that if you do that, it is really possible. So one of the things that we'd like to certainly get more involved with this year, and we'd love you, our listener, to be part of, is let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. If you've got any suggestions of how we can improve, we'd love to hear about that. If you've got any people that you think would be great for us to talk about, if there's any subjects that we obviously do our best to understand what you're interested in and what you want, but you know that, and any information that we can get about that in order to provide value for you. If there's any questions, burning questions that you would love to know or to have the answer about, or if there's a person that you would like to know their opinion on, then let us know. Can't always guarantee that we'll get that person, but we've been pretty successful so far, and so there's a pretty good chance if you put that challenge out there, then it's something that we can go after, and we can escape our own limits and see if we can deliver it for you.